Every few years, the phrase government shutdown floods the news. Markets react, federal workers brace for missed paychecks, and millions of Americans wonder whether their benefits, their national park vacation, or their tax refund is suddenly at risk. But what does a government shutdown actually mean, and what really stops when it happens? Let's break it down from the ground up. To understand a shutdown, you first need to understand how the federal government gets its money. According to the U.S. House of Representatives, Congress is required to pass 12 separate appropriations bills every year, one for each major area of government spending. These bills must pass both the House and Senate and be signed by the President before October 1st, which is the start of the federal government's fiscal year. When that deadline is met, agencies are funded, workers get paid, and government services run normally. But when Congress cannot agree on those bills in time, something has to give. If no full-year funding agreement is reached, Congress can pass what's called a continuing resolution, a short-term stopgap measure that keeps government funded at roughly its existing level while negotiations continue. According to USAFacts, every government shutdown since 1990 has ultimately been resolved through a continuing resolution. But when even that stopgap fails to pass and get signed into law, the result is what's officially called a lapse in appropriations, and that triggers a shutdown. The legal foundation for this comes from two places. First, Article 1 of the Constitution requires that all federal spending be authorized by Congress. Second, the Antideficiency Act, which dates back to 1884, explicitly prohibits federal agencies from spending money that has not been appropriated. According to the Brookings Institution, it was a pair of legal opinions from the U.S. Attorney General in 1980 and 1981 that formally established the modern shutdown process. Before those opinions, agencies largely just kept running during funding gaps on the assumption that Congress would act quickly. After those opinions, the rule became clear. When money runs out and Congress hasn't acted, non-essential government operations must stop. So what exactly stops? This is where the details really matter, because a shutdown is not a complete freeze of the entire government. According to multiple nonpartisan sources, the federal government divides its operations into two broad categories during a shutdown: essential and non-essential. Non-essential operations are suspended immediately. According to the Bipartisan Policy Center, an impacted department must stop all projects and activities within as little as 3 to 4 hours of a shutdown beginning. Non-essential employees are furloughed, meaning they're placed on unpaid leave and legally prohibited from working. They cannot check work email, cannot make work phone calls, and cannot complete ongoing projects.
In the 2025 shutdown, according to the Bipartisan Policy Center, approximately 670,000 federal employees were furloughed, while 730,000 more were required to work without receiving a paycheck until the shutdown ended. In past shutdowns, non-essential closures have included hundreds of national parks and federal museums, the suspension of some small business loan approvals from the Small Business Administration, delays in processing new passports and visas, and the postponement of immigration court hearings. According to CNBC, shutdowns have also led to the curtailment of veteran services and suspension of health inspections. The IRS, during shutdown periods, has seen significant staffing reductions, leading to delays in processing tax refunds. Now here's the part that surprises most people. Essential services do continue, but that doesn't mean they're unaffected. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, immigration and border personnel are considered essential and must report to work. Air traffic controllers, TSA agents, FBI employees, military personnel, federal law enforcement, prison staff, and emergency medical workers all continue operating. But crucially, according to multiple sources, including the Bipartisan Policy Center, these workers do not get paid during the shutdown. They work, they just don't receive a paycheck until Congress and the President sign legislation to reopen the government. This creates real-world consequences, even in areas that technically stay open. During the 2018 to 2019 shutdown, according to one congressional source, air traffic controllers working without pay contributed to significant travel delays, including a temporary halt of incoming flights at a major northeastern airport. The lesson is that essential services can stay open on paper, but operate at reduced effectiveness when the people running them are working without pay for weeks at a time. What about programs people depend on every month? According to CBS News, entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid continue to function during a shutdown because they are funded through what's called permanent appropriations, which don't require annual renewal by Congress. Benefit checks keep going out. But there's a catch. With staff furloughed, the agencies administering these programs have fewer people answering phones and processing claims, which means longer wait times and service delays, even when the underlying benefits themselves are protected. The U.S. Postal Service continues operating as well because it's an independent, self-funded entity that does not rely on annual congressional appropriations. SNAP food assistance, what used to be called food stamps, is a more complicated case. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, SNAP is funded through mandatory appropriations, but the Agriculture Department is only authorized to issue benefits for about 30 days into a shutdown.
During the 2025 shutdown, SNAP disruptions became a serious concern for the more than 40 million Americans who rely on the program. Speaking of the 2025 shutdown, it's worth putting recent history in context. According to multiple sources, including the Bipartisan Policy Center and USAFacts, the shutdown that began on October 1, 2025, lasted 43 days, making it the longest complete shutdown in American history. It ended on November 12, 2025, when Congress passed and the President signed a funding measure. During those 43 days, federal courts used reserve funds to continue operating, economic data releases from the Bureau of Labor Statistics were delayed, and access to SNAP benefits was disrupted for tens of millions of people. And shutdowns are expensive, not budget-saving. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, government shutdowns typically cost more money than they save. This is because furloughed workers receive back pay once the government reopens, meaning they were paid for time they weren't working. A 2019 Senate report found that shutdowns in 2013, 2018, and 2019 cost taxpayers nearly $4 billion combined. The Congressional Budget Office has projected that the 2025 shutdown would result in $11 billion in lost economic growth by the end of 2026. It's also worth noting that the United States is nearly unique in the world in experiencing shutdowns this way. According to the Peterson Foundation, most peer nations don't react to budget gaps by shutting down operations. Germany, for example, continues funding government at the prior year's level until a new budget is passed. The United Kingdom system can trigger new elections when a budget fails. The United States, by contrast, has a structure where the executive branch is funded separately by the legislative branch, and when they can't agree, a legal standstill is the result. What breaks the standoff? According to USAFacts, a shutdown ends when Congress passes a funding measure, either a full-year spending package or a continuing resolution, and the President signs it. The government then reopens, furloughed employees are called back, and back pay processing begins. Under a 2019 law, federal workers are now guaranteed that retroactive pay once the shutdown ends. The key thing to watch going forward is whether Congress can return to passing its 12 annual appropriations bills on time, something that has become increasingly rare in recent decades. Multiple nonpartisan budget organizations note that the combination of political polarization, complex policy disputes, and tight Senate vote thresholds for advancing spending legislation has made on-time, full-year funding increasingly difficult to achieve. The frequency of continuing resolutions, short-term patches, and near-shutdown standoffs suggests this is a structural challenge, not just a one-time political event. If you want to know how a potential shutdown might affect you specifically, the Nonpartisan Congressional Research Service publishes detailed reports on shutdown impacts by agency. USAFacts, the Bipartisan Policy Center, and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget all maintain up-to-date public resources on shutdown effects across every major federal program. This story covers a significant government process that directly affects public services, federal employees, and agency operations across every state. Viewers are encouraged to consult multiple independent sources, including nonpartisan research organizations, official government websites, and reputable news outlets, to fully understand how a shutdown may impact them personally. Follow this channel for daily updates on the stories shaping life in America and around the world.